Should I look at the camera?
Yeah, look at the camera.
Hello.
Okay, good afternoon. We're here with Joshua, and we are going to review an essay today, and Joshua is our guest reviewer. Some of the things that we're looking for as we review these essays is, of course, the rubric. Is there a defensible thesis? What evidence is there of a defensible thesis? And in row B, is this going to be a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 on row B? The other thing we want to look at is, what are the claims that are being made in this essay, and what is the evidence that the writer gives for their claims as part of row B? Is there a line of reasoning? All right, the essay, I'm going to share screen for the essay, and Joshua, I am going to ask you to just start in with, is there a thesis, and what do you think the thesis is, and why is it defensible?
So there definitely is a clear thesis here. Unfortunately, I don't think it is the most defensible thesis, as it doesn't, well, it says that Adichie uses her article in the Guardian to convince readers of the Guardian to read the book and allow its legacy to influence their lives. The writer doesn't necessarily mention what this influence is and how they should be influenced by reading the book.
Okay, so to just say that there is a legacy or that she's encouraging book reading, of course, it's a book review, right? Mm-hmm. So sure, she is encouraging it, and I would agree with you. So is that a 0 or 1 in row A? If it is not a defensible thesis.
Unfortunately, I'd have to say a 0.
Unfortunately, that does come out as 0. The interesting thing is it does mention the word legacy, which is what the prompt is asking for. What is the legacy, right? But we actually have to identify the specific legacy, like what is enduring about To Kill a Mockingbird that Adichie is pointing out. What is her understanding of what is enduring of this book? Okay, and also once you have a 0, there's almost no way you could have actually a 3 on row B, because there's no line of reasoning to defend a non-existent thesis, right? A non-defensible thesis, but we're going to ignore that. And you can say, I think other than a thesis, had this a thesis, this would probably be a 3 if that's what you're thinking of. So let's look at the first paragraph, and I'm going to read this. Adichie clearly juxtaposes the sophistication and complexity of real African societies to simple and corrupt American society portrayed in the book, highlighting the irony is that of the backward Southerners' belief in their moral and cultural superiority over all Blacks. Okay, what do you see in this topic sentence here? Can you explain that to me? Is this a claim? Is it not a claim?
So I think it's a pretty good claim. It kind of tells people about you know what he's going to argue, but of course with the lack of a clear direction in the thesis, it kind of loses a bit of its purpose, I think.
Okay, I think that's really well said. When there's no clear direction in the thesis, we don't know where we're aiming at. So they've made a good statement, at least, right? And this writer here is saying that what is the rhetorical choice Adichie uses? It's the mode of development, the juxtaposition. She's juxtapositioning. And can you just put it in simpler words? What is the claim here?
I guess the claim here would be that, I guess, Adichie shows the sophistication of the African society compared to the simplicity of the American society, to kind of debunk the Southerners' cultural superiority in the book.
Okay, interesting. So through these juxtapositions, Adichie is claiming, well, you know what? There is no racial superiority as asserted in the book. Okay, what about the evidence? Let's look at the evidence. What are the quotes, and are those quotes too long, too short? Do the quotes actually supply good evidence for this claim?
So the first quote, so it's lines 13 to 16. I'm not sure the page, but it says that Macomb was similar to my town Nsuka in Nigeria. It was a place of open doors, of the one strange family, and of petty hierarchies and loyalties. So I think although it's a good quote, I think it could be shortened maybe for just a bit more conciseness. I think it's a bit long, but
Okay.
overall I think it supplies, really good evidence for the point that he's arguing.
Okay, what are the words, what do you think are the only words that would be needed in this quote?
I think Macomb was similar to my town is the kind of important part in this quote because he's setting up kind of the first part where he talks about the similarity of the two towns
Okay.
before he contrasts them.
Okay, good. Well, so the similarity, but then the juxtaposition is also showing the disparity, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so this whole quote could have been just shortened down to make it was similar to my town.
Mhm.
And Adichie is already saying she's drawing those parallels there, right? What about the commentary for that quote? Does that explain why that juxtaposition draws out just the lack of racial superiority?
So I think this first quote kind of sets up the similarity, and the commentary on this explains that, I guess, explains the methods that Adichie uses to
Mhm.
make it clear that these two towns are similar in some ways.
Mhm.
But then I think it leads quite well into the next quote about kind of the differences between these two
Okay,
towns.
what are the words you think led it well into the next quote?
Well, I guess I think just the comparison, I guess, this whole similarity part is good, but then I think the sentence just before the next quote kind of talks about how this comparison, this highlighting of the similarity, makes the stark contrast between both towns more potent when Adichie states, and then it leads
Okay.
into the next quote about the difference. So he kind of explains how the initial description of the similarity makes the contrast more potent later on.
Okay, now, well, let's look at the next quote. What do you think the next book is too long, too short, or just right?
I think it might be slightly too long, but I think it's generally a good length. I think
Okay.
it highlights the part where it says Macomb was also much less sophisticated than my town in a way that was fascinating. So maybe could have been shortened to just Macomb was also much less sophisticated than my town. But I think that that last part, the author of this paper chose to add it, and I can't fault them on that.
Okay, now there is a lengthy explanation of that, it looks like, from just a bird's eye view,
Mhm.
right? What do you think of that commentary? Does it adequately comment on this quote? Is that commentary explaining the evidence that the words in this quote, why that relates to our original claim? Or do you feel like at some point it goes off into a new claim, or is it all explanatory?
So I think the first part of this commentary does a good job of explaining how, Adichie as a young girl saw kind of these two different societies as, kind of interesting, and, she was she took notice of the stark kind of difference in sophistication where her old town was more sophisticated than the town in this book. But I think it goes off onto kind of what I feel like was the original purpose of the thesis in
Okay.
talking about how, despite this similarity, she didn't necessarily harbor hatred towards those who may have been less sophisticated.
Okay, do we know that from the evidence that this writer has shown? That has this essay provided evidence for that?
Yeah, I think so. So in the commentary, it says that the whites' southern behavior was weird and foreign to young Adichie, but then
Okay, but do we have textual evidence for that?
I think I wouldn't necessarily say for the weird part, but just how she found the difference interesting is supported in there, where it said that it was different in a way that was fascinating. So she was
Okay.
kind of interested
Okay.
in the
So there is some
lack of sophistication.
diction issues where it's fascinating, necessarily weird. So it's
Not
the
necessarily.
discussion of fascination, right? Okay, keep going.
And I think how he draws it out to kind of talk about how, or at least what the audience should have drawn from this kind of comparison. I
Mhm.
think I really liked how he explained it out and talked about how they should have followed the example of Adichie in
That's a
partnering.
conclusion now, right?
Yeah,
So we're
it kind of
moving,
moved into a
it moves into a
conclusion throughout the
conclusion.
paragraph.
Okay.
And it talked about how readers should, I guess, understand and accept those who may not be as sophisticated, I guess. I
Okay.
think is what he was. I
Okay.
think that's what he was trying to say.
Well, here's a question. So so we're just discussing the word, actually, the word fascinating,
Mhm.
right? The young girl was fascinated. But is there any evidence of why Adichie was fascinated?
If there was, it was not mentioned in this.
Okay, so that's a claim now.
Mhm.
So now there's a new claim in the middle of the paragraph, right? That doesn't have evidence.
Mhm.
So not all claims are evenly, I'm going to say, supported by evidence.
Mhm.
Aside from the thesis, what would you score this on row B?
I think if this had a more clear direction, I might have given it a 3, but I think I'll have to give it a 2 because it kind of, the argument was good, but it kind of took form later on in the essay when there was less evidence to support it.
Okay, yeah, and so not all claims are evenly supported, so
Mhm.
we're definitely backing off of a 4, right?
Mhm.
And then where everything is evenly supported and explained out, it needed some more support for those conclusionary statements, right? And then 3 is it had piece of evidence, but evenly all the evidence is also explained
Mhm.
and no claims left without evidence,
Yeah.
right? And so now we're back at a 2. I think that's really good scoring, Josh. You
Yeah.
should, yeah. And we want to be very critical in terms of, are these claims, are these new claims being brought up, right? Are there
Mhm.
new statements being made that we actually need to see some textual evidence for? We can talk about the word fascinating, but how far does that carry us?
Mhm.
Well, do we need to drop in some more evidence here from the piece,
Yeah.
right? All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you so much for dropping by, Joshua.
No problem. Thank you very much
And
for,
we look forward to
me
having
on
you do
here.
this again.
yeah, and I look forward to having my essay reviewed.
All right.
That should be interesting.
Yes, click like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. Take 2. We have an addendum.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd just like to point out what I really liked about this essay, which is how I guess the author really took the effort to draw out what he found in the passage that was given, and he drew it out to new claims rather than just explaining the piece for the readers.
Yeah, doesn't argue the author's argument all
Mhm.
over again, right? I think
Yeah.
that's really well done. All right. Thank you once again. Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
And that's the way we look at it, right? All right.
Yep,
Hopefully
that's
that
it.
was beneficial for you. Someone will be reviewing your piece tomorrow.
That should be interesting.
It will be interesting.